Hey, good morning, everyone. How you guys doing? Hi, this is Roman with Holistic Dog Training, and today we have a very sensitive chapter to share about. So, want to talk to you about a little bit about my life with dogs, um, how I learned how I lived with them, and how I had to let them go over the years, and how my connection is with them beyond they go to the Rainbow Bridge. So, since we are talking about that, good morning. Where you guys from? Where you watching from? Where do you have your coffee? Okay, what dog breeds do you have? And of course, my next question will be: have you had experience with letting go of your dog? What was your experience with living with dogs or learning from dogs? So, let me start very early. I think I was about three ish that I remember. We were driving. We used to live in Greece. Make myself a little bit comfortable, just like you guys. So I used to live in Greece with my parents. I'm Greek. My mother is Greek. My father is Austrian. So, and what happened was we were driving on a highway. I think it was 71, and there was a stray dog on the street. It was a, if I recall, a German Shepherd mix. So we picked him up, threw him in a car, and up he went, come to our house. His name was Rex. I don't remember anything else. I mean, I was three, but I remember the dog. I don't remember whatever happened to the dog. I cannot remember him physically being interactive with me. It's kind of like a blank page. Um, I am not declining that I had bad experience with it, and so I forgot about it. I don't remember getting bitten, so it's kind of like a weird situation there. My next memory that I have was in 1974. Yeah, or 70, yeah, 74. I was in Iraq with my parents that time. Um, my father got divorced, um, and I was living with my stepmother. And so he had dogs. He had one dog in particular. His name was Twiggy, and he was a Saluki. Saluki are these Middle Eastern greyhounds, the original ones. And I was playing in the yard, and we had a couple of dogs there. I'm sorry, we have dogs, a couple of animals. I think I remember having an eagle. I had also a wild boar and a sheep as pets. So we all lived together. And so we had this fun time. Everybody was chasing each other, and I was kind of part of the game. I felt very, I didn't feel different. I was just kind of, we're friends, that kind of approach. And then we got two squirrels, like the small ones, like chipmunks. I think they were chipmunks, to be correct. And they were living on a banana tree that we have in the yard. So at some point, I think they were riding on the boar puppy, kind of puppy. Okay, how piglet, and that was fun. I remember that time. I learned a lot. I was very alone. I was in a strange country. I didn't speak the language. We were in Iraq back then under Hussein, and because I was Greek, and my father wanted to try to get me into a German school as the first time. So that was my father language, but I didn't really speak it. So it was really a hard time for me going through. I was bullied by my schoolmates. So my dogs were my friends, and I was hanging out with. And I was alone because my stepmother wasn't there yet. So basically, I was alone in that house. My father was working at a oil processing factory back then. He was a supervisor, so he was quite busy with his work. So I was staying mostly alone at home. Then my mother came in, and after my stepmother came, um, she had my first brother with her, and so it was very very interesting to kind of how the dynamic changed in the house. So one day I remember I was going already in German school, kind of sortish, and imagine it was kind of like a missionary school. So the teacher was a missionary, so he did free work. His name was Prince. He was a nice tall guy. Well, I was small, so I guess it was normal. And I was playing in the yard at that time, and somebody walked passed by, must be a local, and he opened the gate. And we had I would say we have like a the whole property was about a quarter of a yard, if I remember back in time. It was a very classic old um, building, and there was a metal gate. And so somebody opened that gate, and the dog went out. I was totally scared. I mean, I was 6. Um, I was 3, 4, 5 years, 6 years old. Barely went to school. Um, no, 4. No, I was 8. No, wait, what? Um, System processing. No, I was 6. 6 it is. And so the gate opens. My dog ran out. Boom. That's what I heard. I heard that noise coming in. Okay, how about that? And so as soon as that happened, I kind of like could already picture my dog got hit by a car. Okay, let's see what we have here. I see you guys have an issue with my microphone. Let's see if we can fix that. Okay. Better now. Let's see. Good. I think that is an issue. How about now? Better? Okay. I think that will be better now. So, okay. I guess it's worse now. Let's fix it. Let's fix my microphone. Okay, that's all you get. Okay, that's all we have. Okay, that's the last time I do things. I'm just super frustrated right now. Okay, anybody else has a problem hearing me? Okay, that's it. Okay, so I went to the door and I looked outside, and my dog is flat on the floor. He got hit by a taxi back then, and I was super frustrated because I was angry at the person who opened the gate, and I was sad that my dog got hurt. There was blood all over the place, and I didn't speak the language. The taxi driver got out of the car. He was super upset about that too. So I asked him in English or whatever that my language was back then. I think it was Greek, whatever. Doctor, let's go to the doctor. And back then in 72, 73, in Iraq, there was no doctor for animals. There were barely a hospital, barely there. And so he was driving back down the street when my dog was bleeding. I was sitting in the car, and I and I was just holding my dog, and he passed in my arms. So the sad part, when I came home, my father came home, and of course I got yelled at because they didn't understand what happened, and nobody was clear what happened. Um, I was in a total denial of my dog is gone, like my friend. It just poof. And what made me most sad was that my father did not help me bury that dog. He basically went down the street. There was a real empty space, and he basically put the dog on the floor and like a garbage bag. And I remember I was crying a lot. That was really sad for me. And every day, as much as I could after school, I was there keeping my dead dog, company. And I think for a week I didn't eat. But I recognized one thing, and I think that's what pushed me in the future going into my career as a dog trainer and behaviorist, is to understand how things work. How do we have a relationship with a dog? How can we help dogs? How can we keep dogs safe in a house, in a home environment? So all these things came up together as an idea. It kind of like the seed happened there. So I lost a dog in a very dramatic incident, but I learned a lot in that process because it affected me, how I will function in the future. So after that dog, my father got another dog. Um, and then it was Blackie. And she was a Saluki too. And we had other things going on there. We had more animals coming in and out. But then one day, my sheep was gone. We had a sheep there. And I was like, where did it go? And then I didn't know about Eastern. That was the first time I was aware of Eastern, that the thing that's spinning over the fire is a sheep. And it was my sheep. And it was gone. So that was a second hit where I lost a friend. And so I was very bonded to animals. And then the third time in the same period, I think we still was in Iraq. It was 78. The Iran-Iraq war was kind of like about to boil. And I remember my father and my stepmother and I went to Baghdad. We were down in Kirkuk back then. And I was wondering, why don't we take the dog with us? I actually never left that place for years. We were just local there in a camp, And he says, no, we're going to go down to the embassy. I was like, okay. So I remember my father tied the dog outside. How stupid was that? And of course, when we came back, the dog was dead because it took us longer than expected to return. And the dog, I don't know what happened. He was just dead. And I was shocked because so far I trusted my parents, and it was gone. It was kind of like, don't trust people. You know how that comes in? And I think that basically changed also my perception of animal care and how responsible you have to be and how proactive you have to be. You always have to add a worst case scenario, because otherwise it's gonna go bad. So these are the small trauma things that happened that start shaping your world around animals. And yeah, for you guys who just chimed in, I'm Roman with Holistic Dog Training, and I'm sharing my story with death and life and learning from dogs. And now, during the lifetime and beyond the Rainbow Bridge. So later on, I think I paused then. I was kind of done with dogs. I just didn't want to lose anyone anymore. So it took many, many years. I remember I moved from Iraq, I moved to Austria because of the war. And then I stayed with my grandparents until 82, 85. I stayed also in a boarding home. I never had dogs or any pets anymore there. My grandparents didn't allow any. And then the first time I got back to a dog was 92. So from 1979 to 92, like 20 years in between, there were no dogs. And I really miss dogs. I remember every time I would see a dog or a person walking a dog, I would be nice about it. Look, oh, no, meet the dog, um, one thing that really was my experience that shifted also what I would like to do in the future. I had a neighbor. She had a dog. The neighbor was Russian, and she brought a dog with her from Russia when she moved to Greece. She was her dog, and her name was Laika. Interesting, right? So Laika was, we can call it a bad behaved dog. She was all over the place, and I had kind of a good grip on animals, so I kind of like, hey, let me take care of your dog. So I took the dog out for a walk. And of course, the first thing I would do, because my drama brain kicked in, teaching the dog to be obedient. And back then, I didn't have a phone to record it. We had barely flip phones back then. Um, I was walking, and I recognized how eager that dog was to learn. Like, she was paying attention. She was processing. Hi, Steve. She was processing information that I was giving her. And so she calmed down as we walked through the process. So I recognize the dogs are scared in a human environment at the base. And what happens next is they look for information. So they went through a process of bonding. She was bonded with her mother, but not really. It was just a dog living in the house because, some cultures have dogs, um, and these dogs perform a job, like they're guard dogs, they're working dogs. They're not pets per se. Yeah, she was living in the house, but because she couldn't stay outside because there was no yard. And I saw how that dog tried to bond with me, and it was very touching how she really looked for info. How we come every time I walked out the door, she was like right there at the gate, like, "Can you take me with me for a walk?" I'm like, ah, and it didn't take long. I bought to the whole, helping dogs thing. Something switched to me, so I volunteered in Greece for a local rescue. It doesn't exist anymore. And we started rescuing dog, not rescuing, actually feeding dog. There were stray dogs. In Greece, we have a huge problem, or we had a huge problem with stray dogs, because people just go hunting and the dog doesn't do well. They just dump him in the woods and drive off. And so there are so many, let's say, stray dogs, free roaming dogs. There are dogs that we can call it like the res dogs, because we have a huge community of gypsies. Um, Rom and gypsies, there are two different categories of those tribes. And so each tribe had, different locations, but all of them have dogs, just like our dogs would be in the res. And those people basically live out of garbage recycling, okay? And the dogs were part of that. So I saw a completely different picture that I had in my mind, how dogs can live beyond that household that they can stay in. So I recognized a synergistic relationship the dogs have. They had the relationship, but they didn't have a relationship. They were kind of like, oh, if you have some food, leave it out there. I'm gonna get it, right? And by the way, I'm gonna take your kids to school, by the way, and play with your children. And there was nobody's dog there. So the dogs were everybody's dog. It was kind of like a dog human community where everybody was working with each other seamlessly. There was no aggression anywhere, and that imprinted me in a different way. And I saw this is what dogs are naturally. They are they like communities. And I know people says dogs are pack animals. It's not the case. They don't live in packs. I saw many dogs living alone in family groups of people. If there would be pack animals, they would not be able to live alone. They would be only in packs, like at least 2 or 3 dogs, right? Um, that shifted a little bit my mind about that. And then I saw how dogs being treated by people, and that was very frustrating because I recognize how mean people are and how disrespectful they are in their entity. And I also saw that dogs actually don't really do harm to anyone unless they're triggered. So these are things that happened in my life around dogs. And I was recognizing that we are more aggressive than dogs in general. We are unsocial. We think we're social, but we're not. We are social until something takes in consideration. It doesn't match our ideas, and all of a sudden we're kind of isolating, changing ourselves. Um, and we are very ego driven, and dogs don't have that. They are always curious to see what's your opinion, and if that is something they can work with, they try to kind of wrap their life around you. That was interesting. And at the end, um, it was Olympic Games in Greece, and all of a sudden all the dogs were gone. They literally massacred all the dogs in Athens and surroundings, basically took them off the streets. And that was such a shocker because all the dogs that I was feeding, I had these small groups of dogs that I was feeding extra and doing medical attention. They were gone. Literally, I had no clue what happened. All of a sudden, the dogs are gone. Oh, where are the dogs? I drove over there and up, down, and down the street. It was literally, I lost family. And I have a weird thing with family because I never had really a family that was, nurturing and caring at that point. It was kind of like always weird things around that. I felt more connected to dogs than I feel with people. And I know more of you can kind of empathize with that. And then from there, and then there was a pause. I just didn't want to deal with that anymore. I was very, very angry at the government. I was very angry that we didn't know about it. It just happened. There was no option around it. They didn't just relocate the dogs, they just killed them, took them in, whatever dog was, and killed them. I think like 250,000 dogs were gone. That's a lot. Um, it's every dog too much that was killed. And I had an overload. I was totally upset. And then a couple of years later, I moved to US, and I had unfortunate events happening where I missed that part. In my relationship back in Greece, I had a relationship. We had 2 dogs, 2 puppies, that we got off the streets, luckily. And they were really young. I think they were like 4 months or something. We found them in a dumpster area, container yard. And we took those dogs in and we moved them to US. We brought them to the airport. So I went through the process of bringing those dogs in a container, and they were totally traumatized through that transition. So I recognize also that our human environment can traumatize our dogs in an extent that we are not in control of. It happens all the time. So we had a delay on the airport, and dogs were shipped in containers, like we carried them with us in a dog kennel in the airplane. But we had a in between delay because of the weather, and then finally we ended up in the JF in LaGuardia, and 13 hours later, the dogs were totally messed up. Of course, the people would take care of the animals, would put water in there, but these dogs were totally shut down, never been in that kind of environment. And so I start reading about trauma, and I recognize while learning about dogs' trauma and reading about how trauma works, I recognize that I had trauma. And I went through this process. So all these things that happened to me around dogs helped me learn more about myself and my life. In return, I could use that experience projecting it back to the dogs and help them get better. Because once I understand how trauma works and how it affected me, I recognize how they affected and how we can help each other through that process. And then one day, um, yeah, I was applied for a visa because I didn't really want to stay in US, but circumstances happened that we kind of got stuck here because of the financial crisis. Um, and I was start had to do a job because I couldn't get a job because I didn't have a green card yet, so basically just a visitor, and I was basically an illegal at some point, and I had to apply for a visa, and the visa wasn't applied correctly because my lawyers kind of screwed up, and I was forced to do things that other people would consider, what, you were cleaning offices. Yeah, I was cleaning offices at night between 9 o'clock at night and 3 o'clock in the morning. I was going to a nursery and I was watering plants in the morning, and I was working for a pizza place at night because we had to eat food, and we had two kids from my partner's previous life, and so we had to come up with $5,000 a month, which I didn't have. We kind of went over our head on this one, and I had to do different jobs. But I had to spend money to earn money, and which was a problem. And a friend of mine says, "Well, he says, I have a dog, and I saw you're so good with dogs. Maybe you can help me." I was like, "Sure, what's up?" So we started working with one of my friend's dogs, and he had some behavior issues, and we addressed that part. And he says, "Hey, wait, you know what? I'm gonna, I'm gonna help. You know, I have friends that have issues with their dogs. The more not so weird than my dogs. Maybe you should work with them too." And without actually knowing, this guy printed business cards from me and shared them in different offices. And I started getting phone calls. And all of a sudden, I ended up doing dog training. I loved it. I have to say, I loved that aspect because I didn't need to leave the house. I stayed in the house. And so one thing happens to the other, and all of a sudden, I got a phone call from Long Island shelters, and they doing an event, Pits and Parole, an event of Bully Breed Brigade, and they invited me to come over there and help them. And I was invited as a guest with Pits and Paroles to do a workshop. And this is where I got my first intense teacher, Ziggy. Um, and he was not a healthy dog. He was severe aggressive. He was in a completely isolation area. He was fed through a drawer. And at the same time, a couple of months earlier, I got involved with Cane Corso Rescue. So I got in a dog as a foster. It was a Neapolitan Mastiff, and he had issues. And all of a sudden, I have all these dogs around me, and all these guys were teachers to me because everybody had this different complicated issue, but they had some similarities. They were all on the death row, and everybody had to be killed, and I had to understand, how does a dog end up there? And all these things that happened had a purpose, I guess, is for me to see different aspects of dogs' lives and how people relate to dogs and what relationships can do to dogs. Because I recognize all these dogs that I dealt with, somebody dumped, somebody didn't care of, something happened to them that I was not in control. And at some point, I wanted to change that. And I think that's where I moved into human or parenting education, canine parenting education, and behavior modification, because I recognize that's the problem here. We have a serious issue. But everything happened because of dogs' deaths. And I remember mourning for the first dog, but then I was basically in dissociation after my first dog. So I lived in trauma. and I would get triggered here and there, but I never lived it through. So there was always a gap. Um, and I had a human experience where one of my neighbors got shot, and I was the first, basically, responder to that shooting incident. And I really saw a person dying, or tried to survive and then died. And I recognize how helpless we are in general around death. But also, I got awakened into being able to have intuitive information, because at some point I felt like I'm connecting with that person. And after one of my fosters died, I was trying to understand what happened to that dog, because I got him. Um, I had him in my care for 2 days. He was a owner surrender, and he was Dog de Bordeaux. And when I arrived at their house, he came and greeted me. He was a very nice dog, and he asked me to follow him. I know it sounds weird, but he literally came up to me, and he looked back and he looked at me, and he walked a little bit, and then he looked back at me again. And I was like, "Are you going to show me something?" Okay. So I was following him, and he was guiding me around the house, down the basement. And in the basement, there was so high of water, and there was his bed down there, and his food bag was next to it. And I was like, I asked him a question, like literally, like I would talk to a person. Do you live here? And he sat down in the water, and he's wagging his tail. And I was like, shit, he lives here. And that water on the ground was a sewer leak on the ground. And he lived down there. So I went to the owner up there who surrendered the dog. I was like, what's going on? Why do you surrender the dog? He says, well, we have a baby and we don't have enough time for the dog. I felt like somebody stabbing my heart like this, looking at my face and lying to it, and then turning that knife around in my heart. And I was like, why are you lying to me? Why don't you tell me that you get rid of the dog because you're done with him, because you have other priorities? And now he lives down in the basement that's flooded with shit water, and you don't care. You don't even want to touch and clean your dog anymore. So you rather surrender your dog. And I think that was a very traumatic experience around how people dump relationships with dogs just like that, because it's not convenient anymore. And then I had to look into how people build relationships with dogs. What type of relationships do they have? And that dog basically came to my house. Um, he slept 3 nights, and then he didn't wake up in the morning. He died. And I was the first time that I was alone with my dog, and it was my own choice what to do with him, because I basically adopted the dog out of that owner surrender. So it was my choice. I literally was my choice to take that dog, and I paid for it. I paid that owner surrender to take that dog. I know, silly, right? Because I went to the vet and tried to check him out. I had already an appointment, and that dog died in front of me, and I did everything right. So I feel that dog wanted to leave that house and come to me. And I was sitting there. He was laying peacefully on his bed. And I was like, why? What happened? Why did you die? And I got this information coming down. He said, well, I had to experience this. And now I have anything that I needed to experience in my experience. And now I had to go. And I was like, is this my mind, or is it something that is a real communication here? And I found out it was a real communication. There's something that we communicate beyond the dog's passing. There's the energy out there for the dogs to share with you, but you have to be open to it. It's not just a chatter. It's a knowing. You have a knowing about things, and you have to start listening to it. Dogs are very good communicators in all dimensions, in 3D and 5D and whatever D and 12D. They're just such high spirits. And I wish you guys would be able to see what I can see, so you can see the value of that relationship that you have in front of you, and the value of source of information and knowledge and lessons you can get. Because it's not just losing a dog, you're losing a piece of you. I was having a conversation with my wife this morning because one of her stepchildren stepchildren she was caring for a child for many years, and that child died. And she said something that really triggered me to do that um, show today. She was telling me how when you live with a person for a very long time, you start shifting your vibration, and there is a connection, and this becomes one piece. It becomes a connection, a vibration change. Both are affecting each other. And I was like, that's it. That's exactly the concept that's happening here. If you have a dog and you live with a dog and you go into a relationship, you're affecting your vibrations. You're going up. You're supposed to go up. You can go down, but usually you go up. Either you bring your dog to a higher vibration, or as it was with me, your dog helps you lift the vibration. And then it becomes kind of a connection. Everybody helps each other out, pushing, pulling thing. And you can only go up unless you're in denial. And then I start remembering things that I hadn't processed in the past. I start processing dogs that I lost, that I just didn't want to think about it. I just let them go. Make sense? I just had too much pain to deal with it. And it came up as a knowing. I was lucky to not going through this pain of loss as much as maybe some of you guys went through. I guess that's not important for me to go through that pain, but going through the experience and observing it in a different facet and different angle. Um, every dog that I lost in the past, I was blaming myself, and I was busy blaming myself for that loss, that I didn't do enough, I wasn't good enough, instead of really going into that level and says, how did I shift in that relationship? What did I learn from it? How did it affect my lifestyle? It affected me a lot. I am working as we speak every day with dogs who have trauma, with people who are traumatized, with dogs who changed people's lives, who ruined lives, and all these things are happening at the same time. And I'm looking at that like a big painting. You're looking at a big painting, and the closer you see at that painting, the more details you see about that. And then you move away from the painting, and then you see all this a general picture, and you're like, no matter how distant you are from that, you go close, you see more details. You walk away, you can see a better overview. Living with dogs is not just living with an animal. It is more. There's a reason why we live with dogs. There's a reason why we say dogs are the best friend. There's a reason why we are ascending. There's a reason why dogs were with us for so many thousand years. I don't think we're going to make it. We would be able to make it so far in our society as we are now if we didn't have dogs. And what saddened me most is that suddenly, all of a sudden, the last couple of, let's say, 100 years, we threw that relationship in the dump, literally. Because now we're busy with our stuff, our money and our cars and our vacation and our business meetings and our Zooms. And all of a sudden, when we need a dog, we go and buy one. We don't need a dog, we dump him. We're done with the dog, we dump him in a shelter. We're not looking at the relationship anymore. We only look at the convenience. And I think this is what saddens me most. And that's my passion, to make that change, to help people shift their idea, I would say paradigm shift from your dog is your best friend into my dog is an item that I can order and return for no real reason. And everybody's obligated to take that dog because I'm not taking that responsibility. I took that dog with certain expectations, have people in mind, right? We take that dog because it's a good pet, because the neighbor had a similar dog and I like it. So I buy that dog as an item, as an asset, and then it doesn't fit my purpose anymore, and I had this luxury to just dump it. It's a society belief system right now that we have. And if you take a screenshot, broad screenshot, and you join one of those groups, lost and found, or owner surrender groups, you see how many dogs daily are moving hands. And you're like, it's a big number. So if you see that as a picture, you think dogs in shelters, these are only 25% of all those dogs who move from one place to the other. 25% are being moved through shelters and rescues. The rest is under the radar. The rest of 75%, friends, family, stray, shopping, going to shopping centers, buying a dog there out of a trunk, right, at a gas station, on a parking lot, in your neighborhood, from your friend. So 75% of dogs, of those 800,000 dogs or 800 million dogs out there, are being changing hands like commodities, like coffee mugs, like cars. We don't care. We just want the dog. We come pick up. Mommy, I want the dog. Yes, honey, we're gonna get you a dog. What? We're gonna get you a dog because mommy, I want a dog? No, it's not I want a dog, I buy a dog. It's not a convenience item. It's not an emotional masturbation thing that you just put it in front of you and you kind of do your thing. It's a relationship, and you have to see it as a relationship. You have to see them as relationships. And you cannot just go, what is the message you're sending to your family? Buying a dog. There's a mindset behind that. I would like you to look at that mindset. You have to see that, well mentioned, it's not an entitlement. You don't have the right. You have the responsibility. So you go out there, you don't go and find a dog that fits your purpose. You go there to a dog that you want to have a relationship with. You need to go out dating that dog. You cannot just take him out. And if you have a rescue or you're a shelter, you need to give those people an option. Hey, you want to date that dog? Take him out. See how you guys do with each other. See if you guys have that frequency kind of match. And if you don't know how that feels like, let's sit down, let's talk about it. What are your plans for the next 5 years? What are your hobbies? What are your bad mood times, moments? What would you do if your dog pees on your couch? What would you do if you choose your expensive Gucci bag? Right? What would you do? So you need a counselor. You need a counselor to have you that relationship, because obviously you don't know what a counselor is. You only know a person who calls you and says, oh, your dog is available now. Fill up that form, send it to us, and you will immediately be approved as long as you have a 6-foot fence and your dog can be safe contained in your house. No, there is a relationship going on. And there is an educational moment going on, because your child has to learn that you cannot have that dog because you want one. You have to literally do an emotional work around it. Because if you don't educate your child about that, what's going to happen next is dramatic, because your child doesn't see it as a relationship. It would just see it as an item tomorrow. Oh, honey, you want a puppy? I'm going to buy you a puppy. And now we're going to do a test run how a relationship works in the future. So we have a puppy so we both can take care of it. And now we get divorced so we don't have a relationship anymore. We're going to dump the dog back in the shelter because it was our just test drive. All these aspects of it is kind of like wrong in the society. I went to a person in the past. It was a client, and we were having a session, and this dog had severe separation anxiety, and the dog was nuts all over the place. And she was telling me her story about the dog and the reality, what happened. And I didn't know that. The dog told me that. He looked at me, and he looked normal to me. And then I was like talking to the dog, literally mind talking or heart talking. I was like, why am I here? And guess what happened? The dog made a turn. He looked at there was a fireplace. So he looked at the fireplace, and he looked at the fireplace and looked back to me. And I was looking at the fireplace. What's that? I was like, and there were the pictures on top. I was like, who are these people on the pictures there? She's like, oh, it's my son in present time. It's my son. And I was like, huh, okay. So where's your son? Whose dog is that? Oh, it's my son's dog. And I was like, where's your son? Oh, he died. It was kind of a story. It was the fact that the dog, upon the question, why am I here, turned and looked at those pictures for me to ask the question, who are these people in the picture, for her to tell me that it's the dog belongs to her son who died in a helicopter accident. What kind of species is that is a commodity that can spiritually, energetically connect with you, change your vibration, become your best friend? How do you treat that dog even after he passes? Because that story, that frequency changes as the dog passes and moves on beyond the rainbow bridge. A piece of you goes with that frequency. And you need to know how that frequency feels to you. And what do you do for that dog that crosses over and takes that lesson from you with him where he's going? Sharing that information with others. Whatever you do down here is being shared with the collective. So whatever you do here is being shared with the collective forever. So whatever you're messing up down here, whatever you share, you do, you think, you talk, or you punish, that is being shared with the dog collective. It's in the records. You think God is judging you? You haven't seen the dogs yet judging you. Right? So make sure you are aware of that relationship. And I'll leave you with that because I have to close. See what type of relationship you have. And by the way, I'm creating a workshop pretty soon. I was going to announce it. You can check it out on my website soon at holisticdogtraining.org/events. You're going to find the workshop is called My Relationship with My Dog. And we're going to talk about stuff, how those relationships are being built. What is the essence of it? What type of relationship can we have with dogs? What kind of dog relationship can dogs have with each other? So you get a better understanding what's going on there. So you know, whatever you tell your dog and he takes him with him beyond the rainbow bridge, that information is who you really are. Not who you pretend you are, not what the society made you to believe you are, but who you really are. Because the dog sees in you who you really are, your essence. Because it seems like there is a agreement, not contract, an agreement between your higher self and this dog collective to support each other through that ascension process. The time you are born to the time you're dying, the time your dog is born to the time he's dying, all these things are interconnected. It's like you look at the woods, okay, at the Grand Canyon or in a forest, and you see one tree, that's one dog. And you don't see the roots beneath those trees that all connected. You pull one tree out, you're going to do something to the other trees as well. They feel it. Everything is interconnected. So while you see a tree, I see the whole forest. And I'm pointing out to you, there is a lot going on underneath what you don't see. And it's all connected to you. Okay? Just be aware of that. Thanks for watching and looking forward to your comments. Bye-bye.